Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Whiteboard Wednesdays with Werner. And we once again speaking to Zane and Kim from Vast, and we're still continuing our journey as to Vast as a data platform, not just storage. And today we're kind of going to get a little bit more into how it forms part of a ecosystem in terms of AI stack from an infrastructure perspective, and what are some of the pitfalls that we want to share with you to avoid, some of the advantages of combining NVIDIA GPU, Spectrum X networking with Vast, and if you're starting on this journey of building your own GPU accelerated platform, it's not, Kim, Zane, it's not like building your next VMware stack, right? Right, or doing the scale and the technologies and the use cases are just so different. It's not that, right? So I mean, as data scientists, we've deployed a few of these GPU
and big
GPU environments. We've integrated them with various storage platforms, including Vast. So we've seen what can go wrong and what should go right. So we've been there and we've done that. But I mean, Zane, your thoughts on how these use cases and how these technologies need to be approached from an enterprise perspective.
Yeah, so thanks, Werner. I think what we've noticed over our time at Vast, and as we've seen, you mentioned in the previous episode, it's about power, cooling, and things like that. But we've seen that you've got your, as a service provider, so you're pretty agile and they can make decisions exceptionally quickly and do things. Where we're seeing the shift of AI and analytics, and they're moving more into the enterprise now. Enterprise brings a whole different set of rules to the table. So they are very, very risk averse. They need things that have been proven, and a track record of that. So, all of those elements where we are now focused on actually adding all of those elements into an enterprise architecture that makes sense for enterprise customers to adopt technology across the stack, starting with the data, which, in this instance sits with us.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Everybody wants to see AI ROI quickly, right? And it's changing so quickly. And some organizations are still struggling to identify areas where artificial intelligence is actually applied in their business value. So, they employ a data scientist, and this oak is, rocket scientist, and he's in there, and he's trying to formulate the questions that are relevant so that he can find the right data and use cases, right? So what we often find is that they just don't, their time to value specifically that a enterprise demands is very different to like a large, hyperscaler cloud infrastructure or service provider, right? So we have to kind of assist those enterprises in not making the mistakes up front, and to actually make sure that they get jump started into, past all of those learnings. They don't have to go through every pitfall and bump their head against every wall there. So perhaps, what are some of the things that you guys have seen that you believe you need to call out and say, avoid these areas, maybe focus on these areas?
So I think we mentioned previously, you want to get into a data platform that is going to support your future state.
Yeah.
Purchasing a storage platform, as we know, it's been like this for many, many years. It just doesn't move well. You're going to, and like you said, it's got data gravity, migrating, and nobody wants to do data migration.
No, cost of migration is terrible, right?
And if you look at how quickly technology moves, you want to be able to adopt technology as well. So storage purchases are difficult.
Yeah.
So when you go into, what we advise customers is when they're making these decisions is to ask the vendors the right questions. If you want to build open source, open source is going to give you a very limited amount of support. And from an enterprise point of view, open source doesn't always make sense. But there are companies that provide open source support and call it enterprise. But again, in those senses, they might only have the protocols. They might not actually have that data vision or that data pipeline that we talk about.
Yeah.
And getting out of that is so difficult because once you're in it,
that's the thing.
You've made this investment, and the investment's not so much in the software component. The investment's actually in the tin.
Yeah.
And as you know, data just grows. When you start talking about AI, it just morphs.
Yeah.
So these things start getting big, and then you start getting those shortfalls. You start getting those trade-offs in the sense that I need scale, I need more, I need this, I need more.
Yeah.
So
You don't want to paint yourself into a corner,
No.
right?
And I think the second element of that is then making sure that you're investing in the right network infrastructure to tie everything together. And customers have told us, when you go to a hyperscaler, and not so much in the cloud service providers that we see, or that we call AI CSPs, they've built their network specifically for this. Where we talk about the traditional hyperscalers that have been born around, websites and a little bit of hosting, their network investments are fixed. But, you're very seldom going to get 100 gig. You're very seldom going to get 200 gig.
Correct.
And GPUs, we want that performance, but we need to push data to those GPUs.
Absolutely.
So if you haven't made the right investment on the network side, and you only spend thousands and thousands of dollars on GPUs, and now you expect the storage to perform, you need to bring those decisions together.
And that's that chain, right?
You
only as strong as that the weakest link or the slowest portion of that chain.
And I think that, and we kind of look at it from a vast point of view is to give our customers choice. We've partnered with NVIDIA. We offer, obviously, the Spectrum Mix portfolio, but we're also putting Bluefield into the infrastructure as well.
Absolutely.
We realize that we want to have that end-to-end dedicated kind of performance. We're talking into the terabytes a second now, not so much this gigabyte per second. That's support speed. When you're looking at a disaggregated architecture, you pull these resources together to make sure that you can push that data on that pipeline.
And it's such an important point. I mean, just to pause you there, when you're looking at a technology that is in order of magnitude faster when it comes to the networking, right? So organizations are maybe working on 40 gig or maybe 25, or maybe their backbone is at 100 for their normal transactional VMware environments and stuff. And it's fine. I mean, it's you still got, but there is no point actually in doing or starting out a AI GPU enabled cluster at anything less than 200 gigs, right? You add order of magnitude. So, and then you want to be able to scale this, right, holistically across your technology stack. So because there's such a tight or such a deep reliance and dependence on the data and the data platform to feed the GPU, having a golden thread of technology that weaves through the entire stack is almost essential to allow, that complexity not to overwhelm the scale. And that's where Bluefields is actually imperative. I mean, it's one of the reasons why NVIDIA bought Mellanox, right, is for the InfiniBand high-speed network and for Bluefield's technology with their DPUs and SuperNICs and stuff like that, right? And I think that's the thing, is that VAST, as far as I'm aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is one of, if not the only, storage platform, data platform that actually is engineered towards Bluefields 3 or Bluefield's technology in terms of making that a first-class citizen in terms of that. So the integration and interoperability across your environment is all the way from the storage all the way up to the GPU, right? I mean, that's...
I think back to what Zane was saying, from an enterprise point of view, it's hard to shift. You can think of a container ship versus a speedboat. We can move very quickly with a speedboat. That container ship has a rudder, and that rudder has a rudder to turn the ship. And that's what happens in enterprise. When you're talking about networking, a lot of the enterprise customers have said, we're going Cisco. So what VAST has done is to, we focus on NVIDIA a lot. And we do push, the from Kinetic 7 right the way to Bluefield 1 and Bluefield 3, right the way through. And, customers have come to us and said, listen, we've got a massive investment. We've got a common customer that's got a 25 gig network. But we have to make it work. So we do give customers that choice. But when we start talking AI, we start educating customers, hey, this is where we need to get to, and trying to draw a little roadmap for them. The other thing I wanted to kind of mention around the NVIDIA piece is, when customers start hearing about NVIDIA and they start getting educated, there's kind of these two certification platforms that they kind of push. There's this DGX SuperPod certification, which we know is very expensive. You're talking 32 DGXs. It's hellishly expensive. So what customers are kind of swayed over to is NCP, which is the NVIDIA Cloud Certified Platform. And if you go and read that architecture actually talks more about Ethernet than it does InfiniBand. It actually prefers you to use Ethernet, but it's already talking about 400 gig.
Correct.
You know, what we're seeing with the change of 400 gig is customers have got cabling infrastructure. Now, this is a second kind of point to this. You know, enterprises don't just chuck out cabling because,
No.
you know, in 400 gig cabling, and as you know, 400 gig transceivers are hellishly expensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, you kind of want to be in the 100 gig as a minimum, but 200 gig kind of is a very good fit
Yeah.
at this stage. And
Yeah.
it's still, I think, you know, from an affordability point of view, it's a lot better.
Yeah.
Our M3 cabling network is in the data centers today.
Mm.
You know, we can use those kind
Yes.
of backbones. But when we start talking this
Yeah.
this AOC, you know, copper
Yeah.
DAC cables, it's so expensive.
Yeah. And I think that's what enterprises need to understand, is that you are building especially with the GPUs and, you know, on the way that the storage is, that you're actually building a set of clusters, right? You're building a storage cluster,
Sure.
right? Where, as you mentioned, you know, there's architecture, you know, everything can see everything, you know, and it doesn't necessarily, you know, change the way, you know, the dependency is on the communication to actually make that work, right?
Mm.
And then in terms of your GPU stack, so it's fine when you buy your first DGX, you know, although, you know, find a power source for it. It's quite heavy. Yeah. So you know, just know that you're in for 11 kilowatt per DGX. So those super pods at like 20, you know.
32 DGXs.
Yeah, beautiful,
Just
right? Yeah. So you know, build your power plant. So it is a big exercise. But once you start scaling your GPUs and you want to effectively use that farm of GPUs, right? The interconnection, the east-west traffic that you need to move. So now you need to move your data up, right? You have to get it out of the platform and then spread it across the GPUs to start, you know, utilizing it. So you're dealing with a very different order of magnitude in the type of data. Now you've got, let's say, a pod with L40s, right? RT cores, so you're doing more rendering, you're moving video type of data, or 3D kind of vectoring kind of stuff, and then also you're training a large language model with, you know, a trillion points to it, and, you know, these two estates, you know, you've got, this is what the enterprise demands, but they're two very different use cases, right? But in the way that we can build this out, we can stay, you know, standard on the technologies, standardized on the networking to cater for both of these. And the beauty of, but what we can do on the data layer is actually, like you've mentioned in some of our previous episodes, is, you know, ensure quality of service to these different pipelines that we need to have. So, Zane, Kim, it's been great to chat with you guys around this. As data sciences, we've worked very closely with you guys on some really big projects over the last couple of years, and it's been a great adventure for the most part, and it's been great fun for all of it. So you know, really thank you very much for supporting us and also being on the show and sharing your time with us. And
thanks to Data Sciences for being the great partner that you guys are.
Yeah, no, I had nothing to do with it.
Thank you so much, man.
Thanks so much, guys, and thank you everybody for watching. If you guys want more information, please reach out to Data Sciences and Vast guys. Happy to have some chats and guide you on this incredible journey.